Trump's tariff trick. The President of America's new tariff kicks in, and India faces the heat. Allies get 15%. Japan, EU, and South Korea strike deals with the United States, while India gets 25%. No deal, no warning, just a harsh tariff wall. Penalty for Russia ties. Is India paying a penalty for ties with Russia? Trump adds extra cost for India's defense and energy deals with Moscow. Trade equal to not just trade. Tariffs, a new tool for geopolitical punishment. If you buy from Russia, you're out of America's clique. Is that the underlying message? Favorite friends club. UK gets softer terms. India gets sidelined. Is this arbitrary? Trump's tariff logic, part economics, part personal alliances. India's dilemma now. Global ambition versus US pressure. What comes next? Is America forcing India to make a geopolitical choice? How should India react? Top focus on To The Point this evening. All right, let's take that question to our panelists this evening. Joining me, Major General Dhruv C. Katoch, Director, India Foundation, Dr. Abhishek Shrivastava, Assistant Professor, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Sushant Sareen, Strategic Affairs Experts, Brahma Chalani, Strategic Affairs Experts. I'm going to get all of you to weigh in on the question. Let's begin with you, Mr. Brahma Chalani. By putting in Russia, the United States, is it pressurizing India to make a geopolitical choice, Mr. Chalani?
In a sense, what Trump is seeking to do is to use trade as an instrument to co-opt India as a junior partner of the United States. So it's all about geopolitics. It's all about aligning India with US interests. And he himself said yesterday that it's partly about BRICS, partly about India. His Commerce Secretary Lutnick earlier said that the US is annoyed with India's trade with energy and military cooperation with Russia. So all these elements, so it's all about, the two sides are negotiating tariffs, trade, but trade is only a channel to achieve larger geopolitical objectives. This is what Trump is seeking to do, use trade for geopolitics.
Well, Sushant Sareen, would you want to weigh in on that? Because that's what it seems like, where trade is being used as a tool, where India is concerned, to mete out geopolitical punishments.
Look, Trump is a one-trick pony. The only tool which he has in his toolkit is trade and tariffs, right? What else has he brought onto the table? What else does he offer to any of his partners, his allies, or anybody else that he wants to do business with? So one is that this is his brain cannot go beyond thinking of tariffs. Second, I think to attribute some great strategic planning that he's doing, I think that I don't think that's entirely correct. I think the last guy who put something in his ear is what he regurgitates. Third, I think for anybody to suggest that they're giving India a choice between Russia and the United States, I think that's being stupid, because frankly, India already had made its choice. And it's very clear, not just in the last 10, 11 years, but almost this entire century, that we have been moving closer and closer to the Western Bloc, and the distance between us, or the depth of the relationship between us and Russia, for example, has actually not been going to what it used to be in the 70s and 80s. That's a very clear trajectory of events. And yet we don't want to give up our relationship with the Russians, just as the Americans don't want to give it up with the Pakistanis or any of the other, these rogue states that they deal with. Hell, they deal with the Chinese. They want to contend with the Chinese. They want to contest the Chinese, but they want to deal with them. And then finally, to say that, look, why is India a member of the BRICS? Are Baba, India as a member
Okay.
of the BRICS is basically ensuring that that group of countries does not become an anti-Western or an anti-US kind of a bloc. So
Okay.
if you look at BRICS statement which came out, we ensured that neither Israel nor the US was mentioned, right? Even though we were talking about the attack on Iran and everything else, the BRICS statement, but it does not
Right.
mention either the US or Israel. Secondly, on the whole concept of BRICS currency, India does not consider that BRICS currency is either a doable thing or
Right.
something which is in India's interest. So we have rooted in favor of the dollar. Now, if he wants to be bloody minded about it, he wants to be capricious and whimsical, and he wants to act like a schoolyard bully, there's
Okay.
very little
We'll
we
come
can do.
back. We'll circle back to that question because, I think one also needs to reflect whether moving from what we thought was working in our favor, from non-aligned to now multi-aligned, has that come to a pass? Major General Katoch, would you want to weigh in on the developments of the last 24 hours?
Thank you, Preeti. The way I look at it is there is a geopolitical game being played. And as far as the Americans are concerned and the Western Bloc is concerned, they presume that whatever they do, India will follow suit. I haven't really understood why they have that mindset. But for the last decade at least, that India has changed. India is not playing any of those games. India is not following any bloc. We are not following the Americans. We are not following the Russians. We are not following anybody. For the first time, we are really following India's perceived national interests. Now, how we perceive our national interests, there may be a difference of view amongst people. But ultimately, to getting down to it in very simple language, our foreign policy is now related to two simple words: India first. And that somehow is not comprehensible to certain parties, especially the bigger players, because they don't want India to be a player. They want India to be a follower. And India is not going to be a follower. That is one thing which stands out very clearly. It doesn't matter, even when you look at Op Sandur, it doesn't matter what President Trump says that he stopped the war. He was nobody there. He wasn't a player in the game. The
Okay.
only two players in the game, it was India and Pakistan. India dictated the terms. Pakistan bowed. We said, okay. We were magnanimous. That's about all. And even when it comes to trade deals with let us say, with the UK, the trade deals which will come subsequently with the EU or with any other country, there are terms which we will lay down, which is in our interest. In this particular case, as far as the US trade deal was concerned, and I have been saying that for quite some time, you see, the sticking point is really on two issues: agriculture and milk product.
Right.
And that is not acceptable to us.
Okay.
There is a total difference of opinion as far as the US and India is concerned. It's not affected to us. India will do what's in our interest. Trump will do what he perceives to be in their interest. We'll manage. We'll get a way
All
out.
right.
We'll
Okay, I
still
want to bring
maintain
in Dr.
relations.
Abhishek Srivastava, and I'll circle back to our panelists once again. Dr. Abhishek Srivastava, for somebody who's been teaching foreign policy for years at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, how do you view the current situation, sir?
Yeah, Trump is the most unpredictable leader in the current times. Like he's like what he want to do. He don't know the next day. He's thinking the next thing. See, the problem is in the February this year when Prime Minister visited United States, India and US had designed and declared the comprehensive global strategic partnership, the India-US Compact for 21st century. So when both India and US have decided to reach $500 billion trade till by 2030, so this trade impact, this tariff impact will certainly shatter the achieve the desired goal which India and US want jointly. The second thing which I understand for Trump, because Trump is putting sanction on India because our relation with Russia, and he's saying that Russia is killing people in Ukraine. Similarly, Pakistan is killing people in India, and if US is continuing relation with Pakistan, we should say the same thing in front of his
Okay.
face.
All right. Doctor, I want to go back to Mr. Brahmacharani. Mr. Brahmacharani, what do you reckon? Do you reckon India has been painted into a corner, or like some of the participants in this debate feel that, it doesn't and shouldn't really bother India in the long run?
Let's be clear that successive governments in India have adhered to an independent foreign policy approach. Independence is very much deeply ingrained in the Indian strategic culture. India believes in friendship without dependence. That will not change under the present government or any future government, because for decades now, this has been the cardinal principle of India's foreign policy. Now look at what Trump is doing. Here he is systematically targeting independent powers in the global south: India, Brazil, and South Africa. He has slapped 50% tariffs on Brazil. Brazil and India are the two members of BRICS that are seeking to ensure that BRICS does not become an overtly anti-US platform. And yet he's gone after India and Brazil while he's quoting China. He's bending over backwards. He has forced the Taiwan's president to cancel stopovers in the US because Trump does not want to annoy Beijing. He's bending over backwards in relation to China while punishing the leading democracies of the global south like India, Brazil, and Brazil, and South Africa. And even more important is to look what kind of trade deal Trump and his team were pushing for. First, they said the US would retain a relatively high tariff on Indian goods even under a trade deal. That is 20% tariff rate, the way they have forced Vietnam to accept 20% tariff rate, or they have forced Indonesia and Philippines to accept a 19% tariff rate. Now look at the difference between what Trump has imposed on India, 25% tariff rate, and the 20% tariff rate that he wanted in the deal. But in return, what was India getting? In fact, they were forcing India to commit to imposing zero tariffs on most imports from the US. India is a giant market, in a rapidly expanding market. This is the market that the US needs. This is the market that European powers need. This is the reason why the UK has signed an FTA with India. So if the US wants a trade deal with India, it'll have to be a balanced trade deal. It cannot be a trade deal dictated by the US on US terms.
Sushant Sareen, the fact is, Trump might be using tariffs as a geopolitical tool of punishment where India is concerned, but, one should reflect also on how the geopolitical map is changing around us right now. And that should somewhere worry India, would you reckon?
No, of course, that's true. Incidentally, Preeti, I need to correct you. I think on one of your slides, you're showing that they're charging 25% tariffs on mobile phones and other electronic equipment.
Okay.
In fact, there is no such charge on that particular range of commodities.
We'll look at that graphic, right.
I think there is a waiver on that particular thing. So I think you need to fix that. But on your other question, which you're raising, look, yes, it is true that the security environment around India is kind of getting very, very complicated. You have a very clear China-Pakistan nexus. You have the Chinese back the Pakistanis completely. Literally, it's like, as now people are saying, that it's a single front that you are now going to be confronting. You have other very serious challenges developing around the region. And yes, if you were in close partnership with the United States, then that was a kind of a balancing, hedging strategy that we required. But look, if the Americans are desirous of making us a vassal state of the United States, then I'm afraid that's not going to happen. So then we'll have to figure out other ways on how to defend ourselves and protect our security. Secondly, even on these tariffs which he has imposed, I think what is riling us even more is the fact that the way Trump does it, he's trying to finger us, he's trying to poke a finger in our nose, he's doing things to irritate us. Our response has been, which is normal when you're dealing with a schoolyard bully, that either you fight back, which the Chinese have done, and you've seen the schoolyard bully,
Right.
chicken out, right? Or you say that, okay, fine, I'll ignore what this guy is doing, I'll avoid it. But he will keep picking on you because he thinks you are easy meat. Or the third is that you keep getting beaten like some of the allies have done. Incidentally, he's done the same thing with other allies.
Okay.
What Brahma was talking about, even with the Europeans, he says zero tariffs for American products, but European tariffs will be subjected to 15%. European products will be subjected to 15% tariff. It's the same deal he's giving to everybody, that I get zero tariffs, you will have to pay tariffs, and I will then negotiate with you. Essentially, what this means is that America is no longer a member of the WTO, because WTO fundamental principle is most favored nation, that what treatment you are giving to one nation, you are giving to everybody else. Here, this guy is getting into individual deals with separate countries on individual products, individual range of products. And then for the Americans to talk about a rules-based global order, I think
there are no rules to like with what happened yesterday, and I want to bring in Major, General Katoch on it, because General Katoch, I would think what's more worrisome than the 25% tariff is the mention of Russia, because that is clear bullying, because that is clear pushing India to make a geopolitical choice from here on.
Absolutely. And I think, what Trump is trying to say is, listen, you get out of the Russian camp and you come onto the American camp or the Western camp. What he's not getting is India is not in either camp. I think, many years ago when Indira Gandhi was asked when she went to the United States, how do you lean? And she said, we lean erect. And that time, we didn't even have a strong economy. We were reasonably weak and we were being pressurized. Today, it's a different world. Our foreign policy is a very independent foreign policy, but more importantly, there is that element of pride in it. We will do what we have to do, what is in our national interest. We have certain interests with the United States which converge as far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned. And they are very, very strong convergences. But as soon as we get onto the Eurasian landmass, there's a divergence of interest in many cases, like you see in Afghanistan or Iran or elsewhere. There is a complete divergence of interest. So we will play the game the way we see it. India is not going to get into the American camp. India is certainly not going to get into the Russian camp or to any other camp. India is very, very firm in the Indian camp. We will play it. There will be some problems.
Right. Mr. Chalani, would you read that's the messaging, or there's a lot more that needs to be done right now?
The problem is that this particular tariff policy of Trump against India has come at a bad time for India, because India is already under pressure regionally. And right in India's immediate neighborhood, US and Indian interests have become increasingly divergent, whether it's Bangladesh, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Afghanistan, or whether it's Myanmar. And to make matters worse for India, Trump is seeking to basically reach a larger trade and geopolitical deal with China, which basically undercuts the very premise of growing strategic ties between India and the US. So India has to play it very carefully. India has to maintain its cool. India has to focus on reaching a deal through quiet negotiations, without getting into an open spat with the US, especially with Trump. And therefore, what we need to do is to make it very clear that we will not reward bad behavior. We will make it clear that there are certain rules and certain norms that will be applied to this relationship, that India will not become a client of the US. That is the bottom line of India, and I think through quiet diplomacy, India should be able to finally achieve a trade deal.
Right. 20 seconds, and I'll come to you, Mr. Serene, because the quiet diplomacy is not quite working, because that was the intent of the last 1 month, wasn't it?
No, Preeti, quiet diplomacy will have to work unless you want to take on the US directly and confront them. I think there is some merit in quiet diplomacy. And frankly, I think that is riling Trump even more, because there's no response coming from Modi. Modi is not responding to Trump or his jibes. And I think that's the sensible way to do things, that yes, we will deal with you. Heavens are not going to fall with this 25% tariff, but heavens will fall if the penalties are going to come in, because the penalties are separate from this 25% tariff.
And that's practically tied into what he said about Russia. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, that's tied into what he said about Russia. Now, here, there are two things. One, if you put, say, 100% tariff over and about the 20, 25, or 35%, I think, which it will become, you are basically killing trade. You are basically saying we don't want to trade with India anymore. That is one part of it. The second part of it is that they include China in that. But that particular law which they are bringing in allows the president to give waivers. Now, we'll wait and see if Trump gives China a waiver because he chickens out. Then we'll know whether our partnership with the Americans on the Indo-Pacific is actually going anywhere, or is actually we are being used as the fall guys.
I'm sorry, I'm cutting you short, but that's all the time that we have for in this show.